Well, let's now explore some key characteristics of Australia's social security policy system. So, as we started saying, there are two different logics to social protection. One of them is the social insurance, the other one is the social assistance model or the Beveridgean model. So Australia really heavily draws on this second model, the Beveridgean model. And the idea is that this is quite universal coverage for all citizens, and that social assistance is based on notions of citizenship and residency in Australia rather than ability to pay for one's, assistance. So it is quite based on the notion of need, not necessarily income loss or anything like that. And it's quite financed by taxes, and it's managed mostly by the federal government in the Australian context. Other key features of Australia's social policy, and this is coming from many commentators, often saying that Australia's social security system, much like its unique wildlife and its distinctive football codes, stands out as unusual compared to many other countries. It is highly targeted, and I think we spoke to this targeting in week one, and primarily funded by general revenues and heavily relying on flat rate payments rather than payments linked to previous earnings. And again, this is again very much highlighting how we follow very much the logic of assistance rather than the logic of insurance. So we've spoken about some of these notions early on. We've also considered that the other characteristic of Australia's social security system is that it's funded by general revenue, and that redistribution is a core component of, this logic of Australia's social security system, and that it is funded through the general government revenues, and that it is based on two broad types of payments: categorical and highly targeted means of testing are very much, part of the core features of Australia's social security system. And it's based on the assumption that those who can work should work, and those who can't work because of, the risks we have been speaking about, those ones can be eligible to the social assistance schemes. Now, let's see how all this is funded, because funding is another very important element to consider when discussing social security schemes. As we have started discussing on the previous on the previous slide, the Australian social security system is funded through general revenue, funds that government raises via taxes, and it follows the logic of social assistance. We have already spoken about that. But more importantly is the increasingly high rate of national budget which is spent on social security. We can see, for example, that in the year 2024 to 2025 alone, there had been significant portions of the budget, about 35.6% of the national budget going onto social security alone, which is really, really a lot of funding compared to maybe a few other sectors we might look at when we start speaking about other social security areas. So it takes really a lot of funding, and that speaks to the fact that we very much rely on this model of social assistance, or the Beveridgeans social security schemes. So another key consideration of Australian social security is to see the types of payment. We very much have two major types of payment. One is the benefit or the allowances. These are just intended for people in temporary or transitional situations, such as the job seeker payments, youth allowances, students' allowances, and those kinds of payment, which are really designed to support individuals while they are developing skills or searching for work and study. And again, most of these will be very much following specific criteria such as means testing and mutual obligations and so on and so forth. The other key type of payment is the pension. These are paid to people who are expected to rely on Social Security for an extended period of time, maybe because they are already retired or simply because they can't work due to, specific circumstances they might have experienced. Um, Part of it can be also the disability support pension, or the parenting payment, and so on and so forth. So pension and benefits are the two core, types of payments which we get under Social Security. But there are a few other forms of, social assistance. Things like, for example, coronavirus supplement, which some people end up getting during COVID-19, or energy supplement, rent assistance, or the pharmaceutical, allowances, all are other types of, social security payments, which you might see that they don't probably fall under pension or benefits. But again, this speaks to the type of or the model of social assistance which is in place in Australia. So maybe I need to clarify that the society generally accepts that groups like older people and individuals with disability are unable to fully support themselves through employment. And that's because some of them are already retired, others have conditions that don't allow them to work. And therefore, pensions tend to be more of a generous kind of benefit, or, a kind of a more generous kind of support, rather than, people who are on the other types of payments or the benefits. So both in terms of payment amount and conditions, this pension tend to be a little bit more generous than the benefits. So, for example, pensions have higher payment rates, as I've just said, and they are more generous in terms of income test thresholds and fewer work or activity requirements, or even mutual obligations, again, as we said, which are not even very much considered to those. So in contrast, allowances undergo stricter means testing, more rigorous employment obligations, what is known as the mutual obligation. And of course, they are quite different in the way they operate when compared to the benefit. And of course, we've spoken about all these other types of payments, such as the energy supplements, rent assistance, pharmaceutical benefits. All these supplements help address particular living costs and are designed to complement basic payments. So another important element of Australia's social security system is how categorical it is and how targeting it is as well. It is categorical because individuals or households are paid based on specific circumstances in which they are. You might want to consider, for example, what are the requirements to get a Centrelink payment through Centrelink, or what are the other considerations for you to benefit from age pension or family tax benefits, or even the disability support pension. So in a sense, the notions of categorizing and order maintaining we started speaking about in week one will be very useful for you to be able to understand the eligibility criteria to different kinds of benefits. And on this slide, again, you have a few different sectors. And if you go into MyGov, you might see what you are eligible to, what your family or household might be eligible to, and what are the criteria concerned with those kinds of benefits. It is also targeted because it is tight, it follows tight eligibility requirements in terms of income and assets. So in a sense, eligibility is tightly controlled by means testing, as we said, which examines both income and assets. This ensures that payments goes to those genuinely in need rather than just, paying everyone when we are not sure whether they really need the payment itself. So another very important characteristic of Australia's social security system is the belief in paid work. And we had started speaking about this in some of the recordings, that there is this strong ideal belief that those who can work should really work. And then those who can't work should be the only one who would be eligible to the benefits. So in that sense, eligibility for unemployment benefit, for example, generally linked to, might be generally linked to looking for a job or the mutual obligation, training, education, to help get a job, and so on and so forth. And all these, again, are considered very important elements of how the social security schemes operate. We really have to consider, though, a few tensions in how all this operates, and even some challenges in how different political parties prioritize, what should go on the agenda of the social security system. Goals can be complementary and at times even contradictory, depending again on the political traditions and the values and beliefs of different political parties. I just took this example, which we are considering for our second assessment. And again, I might want to invite you here to pay attention to the language being used. We shall have enough time to practice this in the tutorials of week 7. One of these policy statement which says no Australian should live in poverty, and no Australian should be punished for living in poverty. So, the same material which you are using for your second assessment, when we discuss about, we shall be discussing about these in this week's tutorial, and I believe we shall pay attention to, the tensions which we realize, which we can come across when trying to compare different political parties and what they put forward in terms of their social security plans. So another important consideration in Australia's social security policy is the interaction of taper rate and free areas. So the interaction between Australia's tax system and social security creates what is known as the effective marginal tax rate. Simply put, as a person earns more, they pay more tax. And you can see on this slide how this is being illustrated, that, at some point you might not be paying tax I believe if you are earning something below $18,000 per annum, you might not even be paying any tax, or you might be getting your tax return. But if you start earning more than that, the more dollars you earn, the less likely you are to even get a tax return. There are situations where people even remain with a debt, just because they are earning more. Um, they are earning more than many other people, and the government just considers that they should actually even pay more tax than what has been deducted on their salaries. So really important concept to start considering as well, and see how all this can be useful in your understanding of, the taxation system, and which is really an important aspect of Australia's social security system. So, yeah, and again, all these are really key features of the Australian tax and social security system, and you really need to, you know, see how, these operate and what they mean in terms of the second assessment we are doing. So, briefly speaking, Australia's social security system is unique in several ways. Started looking at some of the key features of Australia's social policy system in week one. One of these core features is that it is funded through general taxation. It incorporates flat rate payments split between allowances and pension, and it is categorical and tightly targeted through means testing. And it strongly supports the ideology of paid work and believes that paid work is, the norm, and income replacement or employment incentives, and all the other benefits should come in the case where somebody is experiencing certain circumstances. So understanding all these features will be very useful in critically engaging with policy debates and the realities faced by social security recipients. But also this knowledge will really be useful as you do your second assessment in the course. Thank you very much. And in the next recording, I'll briefly speak about social security policy and political ideologies. Thank you.